Tässä kuuluu tulkeille ainakin.
Kuuluuko striimiin myös tämä? Yes, tervetuloa Aalto-yliopiston ylioppilaskunnan edustajiston kokoukseen.
Welcome to AYYE Reps and Council meeting 7/2023, Thursday the 23rd of November, and it's 5:20 p.m. Nice to see so many of you here. Hopefully we'll get a bit more people later on. So closing item 1, moving to item 2, recording the members and deputy members of the council who are unavailable, disqualified, ineligible, resigned, and present. So first we will see who are here.
Ilmeisesti myöhässä. Hakkarainen. Grekov. Yläpoikelus. Takanen. Suomela. Onko tietoa, onko tulossa? Kirjataan tässä vaiheessa Pyhälammi. Jahas. Muita teiltä. Voltti, Filman. Huttunen. Teiltä muita. Kiitos. Vuoga, Keskinisula. Holmström. Nogon Annan. Tak. Eli tällä hetkellä läsnä 14 ja myöhässä tulevia oli noin 5, eli vaikka hekin...
Currently we have 14 persons here and about 5 coming in late, so even if 5 people come, it's still not enough. Yes, we have 14 representatives present. Let's only give the right to speak to OPS people, personnel, and the interpreters. And also the financial director, executive director board, and the financial board. All members of the student union have the right to be present. Closing item 2, moving to item 3, recording the lawfulness and quorum of the meeting.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja työjärjestys. Ilmeisesti ollaan kuitenkin laillisia, mutta ei...
Yes, but I think we probably are legal even if we don't have quorum. Despite not having quorum, Let's elect 2 persons who will approve the minutes are their deputies. As before, let's also elect vote counters and their deputies. And as before, I propose that the persons approving the minutes will act as deputies to the vote counters and vice versa, which means that we need 4 names. Opening discussion. Filman. Thank you. Could you please repeat your last name? Okay, thank you.
Työjärjestys, toiminnanjohtaja.
Point of order.
Mikrofonini ei kuulunut kunnolla.
Where's the microphone? Here. Is it now better? Yes. Discussed that Filma Määttä will approve the minutes and Palonen Suhta. Yeah, we will act as vote counters and they will act as each other's deputies. Yes, this has been decided. Closing item 4, moving to item 5, approval of the agenda.
Esityslista on toimitettu teille kokouskutsun yhteydessä.
The agenda has been sent to you with the invitation to the meeting. Does anyone have anything to add to it?
Esityslista kokouksen työjärjestykseksi.
Okay, so we'll approve the agenda as the agenda for the meeting. Closing item 5, moving to item 6, announcements.
Keskustelun ja onko ilmoitusasioita? Filman.
Any announcements? Filman?
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Filman Voltti. Tahtoisin ilmoittaa, että...
Like to announce that our representative councils who are not here, that please come here. Tahtoisin ilmoittaa assembly last weekend. Member of the board will present the latest news from the AYYE office.
Kuuluuko linjoille?
Yes. Can you hear me? Great. So yeah, latest news from the office. Community, we had the volunteer recruitment going on. Then we had the Teekkari tradition party celebrations. Tokyo's Christmas sales were a success. We also are filling in our art collection, and we also have a new subject organization, Aalto Business Law. Then some upcoming events. We have the Simo the Hedgehog, Adventure Sauna, Aavas Culture Friday, the Torch Procession, and the Recreational Day for volunteers. Then for housing and real estate, some resident selection changes. All applicants must submit a completed new application by the end of November. We will send you a reminder. There have been many fixes that we have to make to Domo. Then we have the residence meetings next week, where we will also elect the representatives, resident representatives for the AYYE Financial Board. Otakari 15, we are preparing for advanced negotiations with the building supervision and the submission of a building permit, and it's now progressing according to the schedule. There was a facelift project for Otakari 18B and C. It's also advancing in schedule without any surprises so far. Gathering feedback and improving upon the concept with the upcoming projects in mind, since this was the kind of first this kind of a facelift project that we've had. For communications, we have a lot of this big communication project. A report will follow. The volunteer recruitment campaign. Then we also had communications about personal elections. The results of the Röpkö elections, and Fanny was elected as the former of the board. Thomas as vice, Totti into the Syl board, and also Thomas as well. Then we had this website renewal with Siili and doing photographing of the facelift apartments, so before and after photos, and then general communications work as well. Then for advocacy, Yes, as was mentioned, by the success in both the SYL and OLL General Assembly, 25%. The maintenance services of our websites will end at the end of November, and we will close the OTAC server in the volunteers, updating volunteer policies, budget and plan of action, looking into the tutoring situation, approving part 2 of the policy paper, all the business law subject organization application, how about recruitments, and approving part 3 of the policy paper, and also appointing student representatives to the Doctoral Studies Council and to the Doctoral Education Working Group. Also, we are updating our art gallery and selected the jury representative. And also AYYE 2024 annual ball, a preliminary discussion about that. Thank you. Any questions? Filmon? Thank you. Kind of several questions at once. Okay. You mentioned this OTAX, that it's closing down of the server, that the support will end at the end of November, but it will close only in the spring. So does that mean that OTAX will stay up, but just without support? Does this mean that if there's some kind of a website that it's not closed down? I'd ask Annika or Oskari this. I can't really answer. Thank you. The website.
Saadaan sieltä siirrettyä pois, mutta ajatus ei ole, että
remove them from the OTAX server. But for example, associations who have been already challenged the contact, we will not just drop them out, because the OTAX support doesn't end by the end of November. It's until the end of February, I think.
Tietoturvatuki päättyy siitä nykyisestä.
So once the data security support ends, then we will stop its use for real.
Jos jollain yhdistyksellä on vielä prosessi kesken nettisivuista, niin tapahtuisi kamalia.
So nothing terrible will happen yet in December.
Ja jos sopii työjärjestys, siellä on ainakin muutama näyttää olevan myös.
Point of order.
Luoma ja Vallo. Kiitos.
Kiitos samaan jatkoon sähköpostipalvelut.
And yes, about the email services, I believe that those will still stay in use. Okay.
Toiminnanjohtaja nyökkäällä ja tulkitsen, että pysyy.
Yes. Apparently yes. Then
keskusteltiin Israel-Palestiinan konfliktista.
So have these nominations been published?
Sano suurestaan vielä, ketä toi...
Tempausesikunta.
Yes, tempausesikunta. Who were elected? Is it public information? It should be on the website.
Joo, tarkistan vaan, että okei, eli hyvä.
Yeah, I'm just checking whether it's there.
Eli mitä VSC:lle on?
And WSC, what was this actually? This response?
AYY:n hallituksen jäsen Rönkkö on toiminut tänä vuonna.
Our board member Rönkkö has been the chair of WSC this year, and from AYYE's initiative, there has been discussion of how meaningful it actually is to have this urban advocacy network in an association forum, because that causes a lot of challenges for its operations. And since AYYE has been pretty much the only one who has brought this perspective forth, then the WSC asked from the AYYE about our future vision for the association structure, but we are still continuing this discussion. Last question. Have you yet discussed the influence of the new Act on Joint Activities, Joint Administration?
Asukastoimintapäivien silloin 11.12. joulukuuta.
Yes, we will discuss that at the start of December.
Muita kysymyksiä?
Thank you. Any other questions?
Kiitos ja pahoittelut vielä.
Thank you. Apologies. But yes, you mentioned the events.
Pikkujoulut ovat saatavilla lauantaina 9.12.
Also, like to remind people that we have the pre-Christmas party on the 9th of December. I forgot to mention that during the announcements.
Suljen aiheesta tänne
Closing discussion.
vaikka nyt ei suoraan siis tästä kokouksessa päätä.
Even though we will not make the actual decision, but the motion is that the RepCo decided to record the latest news from the office.
Suljetaan kohta 7. Niin
Closing item 7, moving to item 8, approval of the second part of the policy paper.
Ne ole hyvä.
He's now presenting.
No niin.
So,
No niin, sitten olisi tarkoituksena käydä läpi
the idea is to go through
toinen osa. Tänään kanssa
the action plan part 2
keskustelu koulutuspolitiikasta.
and have a discussion on educational policy.
Aalto-yhteisön osalta mä käyn
On Aalto community. I will first off go through the process, what's been taking place for the last month. Also have instructions for the handling of this process, after which we'll have the changes that have been made and then continuation on activity. So, the last meeting we had the preliminary, we went through AYYE, advocacy committee. And you've had the opportunity to place any suggestions, which of we got quite nicely after the last meeting. Lots of proposals for change through forms, which was very nice. Thank you. Proposals for change, and the board's stances have been sent to you. Also, translations are available. Today, the idea would be to approve this. Now that we don't have quorum, we'll still go through all the other elements, so it's basically ready for approval. We have quorum. And of course, educational about zoning, also an addition which about construction, which is in the policy paper already, in different ways to increase tenant about affecting the ARA legislation. This is already in the societal part, and an addition on the ARA legislation regarding queuing processes.
Ja sen lisäksi uusi korkotukilaki.
And of course, the new legislation on interest support. It already ensures that the process is transparent.
Jos on niin kaksi on hakee, niin silloin se on myös yhteisvastuullinen sopimus, ellei sitä ole erikseen merkattua.
Also in addition that students should have a specific separate electric rights
ilman sähkön sisältymistä.
without the electricity being included in the rent, so we can actually support people to take sustainable choices in energy consumption. The challenge here is that what needs to be done with shared apartments. It's a lot easier if it's included in the rent. In addition, that student housing should focus on high and tightly packed building, and it's a bit broad. It's approved by the board. What does actually consist of all buildings? So we only narrowing it down to skyscrapers, for example, and about ensuring that parking spots are available for those who need it. This is a repetition. It's already there. Things that we approved, several parts about, we talked about light traffic, we talked about walking and cycling, change. I think this was 21.
Kevyt liikenne on niin
The
nykyään vanhentunut termi. ja
term has changed.
kävely ja
Term
pyöräily sen tilalla.
light traffic
Ja
instead
sitten
use the
toistetaan
terms
tavoite
walking and
klassikosta
cycling.
joukkoliikenteestä.
And
Annetaan
remove
tavoitteena
the
kaikille
request for
edullista
free cycling paths and the parking spots at the campus are focused, so that we didn't approve the fact that we'll cut down on parking spots and have them edges. Was adopted that the campus is safe for everyone. Everybody needs to have a chance to stay in the campus area and live there during their studies, and that the campus area has spaces which enable a diverse student life and student culture. We didn't approve the following. Campus enables active student life without compromising the the peace and quiet of the individuals living in the campus. I think also about safety, there was also a write-up, an addition on research and startup ecosystem and its significance in the Otaniemi campus. I think this would be about educational policy rather than campus.
Liikuntaa kampusalueilla.
Let's develop
Tästä löytyy jo linjaus
sports at the
linjapaperissa.
campus areas.
Sitten
There's also
tiedot
write-up
kampuksen
on
alueella
the
opiskelijaasumistilojen melutasoista
policy paper.
tulee olla vapaasti saatavilla kampuksen käyttäjille ja asukkaille.
An addition about
Haastava kirjaus, koska se vaihtelee.
one which was very challenging because it changes by individual. Do we require that we should make decibel checks at buildings? What this might be quiet for something, or like what be quiet for one might be very noisy for another. We talk about regular noise levels, and also we didn't take into account that we should have a swimming place for Otaniemi because it was very specific. It will go to the improvement of the campus environment.
Yes, kiitos Antti.
Yes, thank you. On
Seuraavaksi tosiaan
the-
näitä muutama kirjaus, jotka liittyy
a few write-ups
pitkälti yhteisön kanssa
that have to do with stuff made with the
tehtyihin
community,
linjauksiin, tosiaan orientaatiosta ja
orientation and
tutoringista.
tutoring.
Saatiin
We
pari
got
muutosesitystä sinne.
some proposals for change for
Tosiaan,
there.
jotka hallitus otti itselleen nimiinsä,
The
niin
ones
just
that
tää
were
turvapaikkaliiton
adopted by the board
lisäapuvien
that
opiskelijoille.
after the orientation week,
Halutaan
ensuring
varmistaa
orientation for
integraatio.
students
Ja samoin, että tohtori- ja
who
KV-opiskelijat
arrive after the first
saa
week.
oikeutta
Also that postdoc students feel like a part of the
alumnitoimintaan. Vastavalmistuneen tulee saada tietoa
grad students.
alumnitoiminnasta sekä tietää, kuinka
On
se
alumni activities that graduates need to be part of the alumni activities and feel like they are involved. But volunteers and organizations, this was an addition to previous points.
alojen ainejärjestöillä on
Different
maksuttoman
subject
luvan
organizations have free facilities at the university. They will be as close as possible to their study spaces for the subject organizations, and access to these facilities should be easy and accessible to students. The facilities should be available 24/7.
Joo, tässä oli tosiaan valitettavasti käynyt silleen, että tässä
Yes,
oli nämä
regrettably
kolme
there
kohtaa,
happened
jotka
also that there are these three
liittyvät
parts
yhteisön, niin tässä oli
which
käyttäminen
were under the
AY:n
community.
toimistosisällön
There's kind of a
että ei oltu saatu näitä,
inter-office
nämä toki löytyy sieltä
mistake that we
Excelistä,
didn't
mikä on
receive
myös
these, but they
toimintojen
are in the
seuraava
Excel that
tästä,
has been
että
submitted.
oli
Sorry
nämä
that
kolme kohtaa, niin
these
ne
three
oli jäänyt
items
tosiaan aikaisemmin täyttämättä.
were kind of left unfulfilled earlier.
Sitten YV- ja KV-puoleen, tuleeko
And
asiantuntija
on
vai
equality,
esittelemään?
Yes,
the
kiitos.
specialist
Eli
present.
tosiaan yhdenvertaisuudessa
Yes, so in
tässä
equality,
huomattiin semmoinen
we
pieni
noticed a kind of
kielenkäynti,
a
elikkä on tosiaan
language problem
Manten kanssa
that
työstänyt
with
tätä
Mante we have
asiaa
worked
englanniksi.
on this
Ollaan
portion in
käytössä
English. We have written
meidän
in English originally, so it has been translated to Finnish, and there was a connotation mistake.
tarkoitettu asiat, mutta sitten muuta linjapaperia on
But
työstetty suomeksi.
the rest of the policy paper has been worked in Finnish, and then we've translated it so that
Englantiin.
the rest of the policy paper has went from Finnish to English, but this part about equality and internationality has gone from English to Finnish. It was actually not written there as actually the translation mess. It's a partly stylistic, but partly contextual.
Korjaus on se, että
The correction is that in the Finnish version, what was shared to you earlier, there's the right that AYY approves individual differences, but it has been corrected to the form AYY cherishes the differences between individuals because the English term was
sana embrace.
embrace, not cherish actually. Nationality, no other changes on that the board did not approve that the fact that the addition to the support for working like it's more about educational policy, so we'll place it under educational policy.
Tosiaan
Thank you, Ronja.
sitten seuraavat jatkostepit tälle. Tosiaan niin kuin tässä lukeekin ekana, niin tänään ei kyllä niin kuin, ei pystytä
Like it states, like we cannot approve this today because we don't have quorum, but I would support kind of a motion where once you have received template from last week, if you want to make changes to the template, everything should be sent through forms, which should be sent to you today. If you want any other changes to the template, they should be sent through the forms. And after this, we'll have the educational policy preliminary discussion that will take place next. Would it be okay that take a 10-minute break so that the RepCo has the opportunity to place proposals for change and then going through those?
Siis sillä tavalla.
Let's do it so.
Pidetään tauko 18.00 asti.
10-minute break until 5 minutes past 6 p.m. and we'll go handle the rest of the proposal for change and then move on to the preliminary discussion.
Kolmannen osan lähetekeskustelu. Mikäli tulee muutosesityksiä, laittakaa ne ASAP. Kiitos.
Yhteensä.
Okay.
Oliko
I think we
17,
received
16 muutosesitystä.
16 proposals for change.
Ja hallitus äsken kävi ne läpi ja on muodostanut niihin kantansa. Se, mitä
And the board went through them
mä luen täältä aina
and has also now their position to this proposal for change. So I will read out the group who has proposed this and the actual proposal, and then we will hear the board's opinion on the proposal. And if the board doesn't adopt the proposal, then if you want to have a vote, you need to have a backer. Then we will have the vote.
Joo, yes. Okei, ensimmäisenä Voltilta.
First, Volt
Ehdotuksena
related to equity.
Joo, se on ainakin tarkoitus.
Pahoittelut.
Olisiko ne mahdollista saada se Exceli tähän näkyviin?
Can we get the Excel up here as well?
Selvä.
Vote on this instead. If the representative council wants to vote.
Tähän kannattaa. Löytyykö kohtaan 1 tai
Do we have a backer?
kannattaa? Ei löydy.
Racist with opposing all forms of racism and discrimination. Do we have a backer for this?
Ei löydy. Siirrytään rivillä 5.
No, moving to row 5. Replacing AYYE is anti-racist and internationally feminist organization by AYYE opposes to all forms of racism and discrimination.
Kannattaa. Työjärjestys. Kiitos. Tulkitsen, että ei löydy kannattajaa.
Apparently no backer for this. Moving to line 6. Replacing AYYE's anti-racist and intersectional feminist organization. This is the same one. So as the regional is blue, proposal for change is red.
Laput ylös nyt.
Raise your voting slips now, please.
Sininen voittaa ään.
Blue wins.
Punaisella 6. Loput olivat tyhjiä. Muutosesitystä ei siis hyväksytä. Siirrytään riville 7.
Moving to line 7. EDI replacing with the Finnish equivalent. The board stance is that if you can find an existing Finnish abbreviation, we will replace it. But we are not aware of any other abbreviations in Finnish either about this.
Puheenjohtaja Fima Votti, jos hallitus voisi vähintään kirjoittaa sen auki muistaakseni.
If board could at least write it, kind of describe what the abbreviation means.
Suomenkielinen sanottu, mutta sen jälkeen siinä munkin muistaakseni perässä vaan edi, niin jos sen saisi vähintään siinä kirjoitettua, mieluusti korvataan koko sana.
So preferably replacing it with the entire words.
Puhuttiin tässä käännösasiassa, eli se on siellä englanninkielisessä kirjoitettu auki, mutta se ei ole ehkä suomenkieliseen niin kuin alle.
It's been described in the English version, but maybe not in the Finnish one. This is a stylistic change, but we'll look into it.
Kiitos. Ei käsitellä kohtaa.
So yes, moving on.
Olemassa siis, täällä tuli työntekijältä. No, lisäys, että löytyy myös.
Employee says that there is also a Finnish equivalent for this abbreviation.
Siis EDI-lyhenteelle ei ole semmoista vakiintunutta suomalaista.
There is not kind of established equivalent, but it comes from equity, diversity, and inclusion or inclusivity, which is also stated in the policy paper. We say it in Finnish here, and then the abbreviation, and then later on we use only the abbreviation. So we have previously said where the abbreviation comes from. The way I see it, what we shall do is to look into abbreviations in the entire document to see if we should explicitate them.
Ei käytetä englanninkielisiä lyhenteitä.
Yes, and I also hope that we wouldn't use English words, English language in the Finnish version. Well, would you have a proposal about what to use in the Finnish version then?
Pallosuo Vihreämpi Aalto, siis ymmärsinkö?
Also from Vihreämpi Aalto, I understand correctly from the employee's comment that he mentions this working group, for example, which has a Finnish name. Couldn't we just use the term used in connection with the Finnish name of the group?
Joo, niin kuin tässä jo aiemmin tuli esille, niin tämä Aallon komitea on yhdenvertaisuus, monimuotoisuus ja inklusiivisuus.
Yes, there's the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, but there is no established abbreviation for EDI. So it could be like, I don't know, YMI, YMI in Finnish. But when we talk about the committee that uses the abbreviation EDI themselves, that's the name of the committee, then I don't think we should change it. And that's why the EDI is purposeful here.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Voltti. Ymmärrän kohdat, jossa puhutaan näistä toimikunnista.
Yes, I understand this part where you mentioned the committee, but also when just talking about these issues and not of the committee, the English abbreviation is used there as well.
Siis, että hyväksytään tämä stilistisena muutoksena, jota hallitus...
Let's approve this as the stylistic change.
Yes, siirrytään riville 8.
Joo, me tässä tehdään tämmöinen vaihtoehto, että minä myös luen tämän rivin, niin sitten vältytään...
I read this out loud. This proposal, this line. Next proposal, removing the part AYYE advocates for the rights of LGBTQIA plus people and promotes the activities and campaigns of such organizations. We will not remove this. We represent all students regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. Do we have backer for this?
Ei löydy. Siirrytään riville 9.
Seuraavana oli kohta tänne opiskelija-asuminen.
Next, student housing.
Yleinen asumistuki tulee olla kaikille yksilöinä
The general housing allowance should be individual regardless of who the person lives with. This is already mentioned in a separate section. That's why we will not adopt this, because it's already mentioned. Do we have a backer for this? Filman?
Niin kuin tätä ei ajettu siinä osiossa.
But this is not listed in this section, am I right? or that you don't mention this, that
No siis,
you should promote this.
Ylipäätään siis asumistukeen liittyvät linjaukset on siellä yhteiskuntaosiossa.
Yes, entries related to housing allowance are in the society section. And we don't want to have a societal influencing here in this section that actually deals with the Aalto community. And apparently there is also no backer for this, so line 10.
Seuraavana esityksenä oli, että täältä linjapaperista löytyy lause. Autopaikkaa ei tule nähdä välttämättömänä asumisen palveluna kampusalueella sijaitsevassa
There is this parking spaces must not be seen as a necessary housing service in student housing located on campus if public transport connections are considered sufficient. And we will replace this with that temporary parking possibilities should be ensured. And individual parking spaces must not be seen as necessary housing service. We do not adopt this. Do we have a backer for this? Luoma.
Siirrytään äänestämään.
Let's have the vote. So the original is blue, which is parking spaces must not be seen as a necessary housing service in student housing located on campus if public transport connections are considered sufficient. And the change is the possibilities for temporary parking must be ensured everywhere, and personal parking spaces must not be seen as a necessary housing service. So original is blue, proposal for change is red. Let's vote now.
Yes. Pohja voittaa 8-6.
Original wins 8-6.
Muutosesitystä ei hyväksytä. Siirrytään riville 11.
So this is rejected. Next lines 11 and 12, which are just the same as previously, actually. I propose that we move to line 13 because they're the same as before, just in different parts. Here we have the addition, general housing allowance for each on an individual basis, regardless of their housing type. And same justification as before, that we do not want to have societal influencing entries here in this section that deals with the Aalto community. That's why we do not adopt this. And no backer for this. Moving to line 14. Here the same, similar here, that we must enable separate rental agreements for everyone. This was brought up during the preliminary discussion, and Ante already mentioned why we don't want to adopt this. And the reason is that it's already possible to have separate rental agreements in shared studios. But it's very challenging from a legal perspective to provide separate rental agreements also for families who live in the same apartment. Yes, I'd like to point out that these separate rental agreements are possible, but maybe the reason for this is that
siihen on ehkä vaikeampi saada suoraan sitten kahta henkilöä kerralla, jotka haluaisivat asua yhdessä.
Maybe more difficult to have two people there at the same time who want to live together if they both have separate rental agreements. But I think this is the only problem here. It is not difficult in any other way. For example, the locks can be changed at the expense of the tenants. Yes, but we still are of this opinion. And we also think that this is pretty much about the societal influencing and not that much about the Aalto community. But in addition to this justification, also this justification that Antti presented are applied to this as well. Do we have a backer? No.
Yes. Tämä lisäys oli kohtaan kansainvälisyys.
This was for the part internationality. Especially when we talk about the bank services for international students. And there's an addition that basic bank services must be available for everyone living in Finland for free. This is about internationality and international students. and about the international students. So board feels that this sentence at this part of the policy paper is the wrong place. It's so much detached from the other text that we will not adopt this. Where does the board then think that this could be put if this is not the right place? Because this, of course, affects international students. Of course, it would be good for everyone, but it's still a big issue for international students in particular. We didn't have such a specific discussion with the board about where it could be put. But as I remind you that this is a policy paper for our student advocacy work. So this is maybe bordering on if this is relevant for AYY's opportunities to influence. Maybe this would be the right place for this would be the society section instead of this one. Do we have a backer for this? No. So line 16. This was for the section volunteers and associations, and there was this asked addition of the club space opportunities for associations will be developed actively, and it will be made possible to have a joint space for long-time rental facilities and try to promote their turnover, and these facilities will be offered openly to all associations who take in members. We felt that this good, the idea of developing the club space facilities and opportunities for associations, but the end here has to do with, for example, a lot with our existing rental agreements. So it's very complicated. And we also have the associations regulation where we already state how we divide, how we allocate facilities for different student associations. So that's why we will not adopt this. If we divide this into two parts, where we have the first part and then the rest, would the board be willing to adopt the first part?
Ei oteta tätä kyseistä ehdotusta nimiimme.
No, we will not.
Jakaa ton ehdotuksen kahteen.
The chair, may I divide this into two proposals at this point?
Laita. Ei varmaan ehkä tarvitse laittaa. Niin. Yes. Käsitellään nämä tuossa kohta, jos ne jaat ne kahteen kohtaan. Niin
yes, and if you divide them into two, then we will go through 16 and 17.
17 on sama, mikä on käsitelty, eli tämä on käytännössä viimeinen.
So this was the last one.
Mutta korostan siis, että edelleen tässä ylemmässä versiossa tulee
But yes, I would like to emphasize that in this version, it's difficult for us when it comes to especially the rental agreements that we could ensure this turnover between associations. It will be very challenging. That's why we don't want to adopt this.
Hallitukselta käsiäänestyksellä, että niin kuin...
Ask for a vote of hands from the board.
Okay.
18. Löytyykö meillä kannattajaa muutosesityksellä?
Do we have a backer for this?
Ei löydy. Siirrytään.
Apparently no.
Kysyn samaa. Löytyy.
Line 19. Do we have a backer for this?
Ei löydy.
Apparently no.
Muutosesitysten käsittely.
So we will now close the discussion when it comes to these proposals for change.
Yes.
All right. So I will close the discussions and move to decide. The motion being that the representative council decide to approve the second part of the policy paper in accordance with Appendix 8 decided, closing item 8, moving on to item 9, preliminary debate on the third part of the policy paper. You may continue.
Isompi kavalkaadi
esittelyssä. Larger group.
No niin, illan viimeinen lipasessio, eli
final policy paper session for the evening, so the preliminary debate. Telling about the process first, how we ended up in this one, so also talk about the contents, then Vaiva's comments, and finally how we will progress with things. So the office and the board have worked on this part, mostly educational policy. Then on feedback, feedback has changed the least. It's almost the same as the previous one. Peer review shouldn't be the primary form of feedback. Also the phrase about an electronic test archive for all majors. Write-ups on language teaching, how it should affect. We won't take a stance on it. We will take a stance on whether or not we should have these monetary scholarships that some schools offer. And new write-ups regarding avoiding preliminary tasks, flexibility in studies, pretty much the same. We have removed some outdated things about unifications of credits and internationality that are already mentioned in the policy paper. And the AHOT parts moved to working life. About language, this has been reworked the most, mainly to do with the university's current update on language. Taking this into stance. Now we're also moving from national to international politics.
Ollaan listattu linjaus aloituspaikkojen alueellisesta kohdentumisesta.
Then we also have an addition on area-specific focuses on starting spots. Also had a policy on how Finnish students have fought in European student networks.
Koulutuksen rahoitus säilytetty paljon vanhasta, mutta tehty lisäyksiä lukuvuosimaksuja koskemaan.
About funding of studies, preserved a lot of the old stuff, but made additions on the stuff regarding to yearly tuition fees. We are for removal of tuition fees, but regardless, we'll make a policy on specific about those fees. And of course, make a policy on study parts.
Ollaan lisätty linjaus ikuisen opinto-oikeuden palauttamisesta.
Greece made a point about permanent study rights back and removed a policy on something else that the interpreter didn't have time to read. About student choices, pretty much the same as the old paper. A few old outdated write-ups removed about MOOC choices, which is not very relevant in our university. about transfer applications and addition, and then focus that the entrance exam would still be the main way to gain entrance and choose students. We have the old policy papers about facilities. We have the accessibility for 24/7 and the opportunity to choose facilities in a diverse manner, and policies on specific facilities like the Aalto studios. Working life made it into its own chapter. So policy paper parts gathered from other parts regarding working life, and which we gathered here. And of course, now that Microsoft Authenticator has been here, we also had a write-up about all electronic services of the university should have a single sign-on opportunity, and the sign-on would be forced for something that the interpreter once again didn't have time to read. Thank you about AYYYE's comments that have been gone through last week, going through these portion by portion, and those will be taken into account as with the discussion undertaken in the Representative Council. AYYYE's point that we would support student representative remunerations, monetary rewards, stylistic changes to term professors to all members of staff in the university would be more broad, concern more teachers. In addition, that the value of teaching and appreciating teaching, the addition that all schools have the responsibility to ensure that the teaching is of high quality. About feedback and addition that based on feedback, the development targets based on feedback. There will be also a summary of feedback that would be published. About course organization and addition, write up that ensuring that help can be gained to those who need it, and when we are on courses, it's possible to get assistance privately without it being recorded. Also, how flexible studies and how flexible studies are. We also discussed on how remote teaching affects that. Also, we had some discussion on what should be AYYYE's policy, how much remote teaching should be increased from its current level. If I remember, I think the office is that we want to stay so that we won't increase the amount of remote studies, but AYYYE had some dissenting opinions or differentiating opinions on this. About flexibility in studies, in addition, that take part the fact that studying in other schools of Aalto would be possible and it would be supported. On language, it's kind of a stylistic change about removal about also in the future. And in addition to focus on the linguistic studies that teachers get, and also the change that Finnish and Swedish students would have the opportunity to make the exam in Finnish or Swedish, and of course a stylistic change about the framework of the university structure. Discussion, we're going to use the term kotiseutu in Finnish, which means like home region. Some last comments from AYYYE regarding funding. Comment on comment that Finland shouldn't offer free education without some sort of remuneration. About student choices, a comment that people should get entrance to a higher education degree, even though you do not have a second stage degree, meaning high school or vocational trade. And in addition, that with other equivalent knowledge. And there was a wish or a focus that we were discussing a bit that had to do with the fact that should the entrance exam be the primarily means of entrance. And about facilities. We had some additions that you should be able to keep your coursework at school. The term that home bases would be means to learning facilities. Addition that learning facilities should be accessible 24/7. In addition that students should have the opportunity to receive training and opportunity to use tools on their own. On working life, a change that mentions of copyright would be moved to course organization.
Sisäistä muutosta.
Kind of an internal change. In addition that the value of training should be seen in salaries, and also that this educational policy that conscription or military service should not hinder your studies. Here we're going to what happens next is that we'll have the preliminary discussion of the subject. You've had the material, you have been presented with AYYE's comments, and some discussion has taken place. So next up, we could maybe have many who have been in these preliminary discussions. If you have any new, maybe there's something here that stance, what it should be, should the stance be different, is there something that your REPCO group does not agree with, and the opportunity to give out requests to the floor. My point being here that if you want that your idea or opinion here should be taken into account, you have received another form today through which all proposals, comments, etc. So send them through that. We can take them into account then in the final preparation process. Thank you.
Keskustelu sieltä ensin.
The discussion.
Yes, Palosuo vihreämpi aalto.
Yes, Palosuo vihreämpi aalto, greener aalto. If I recall correctly what has gone through, we have removed some things that were about digitalization, which were kind of something that has irrelevant after COVID found. I couldn't find what these things were, so I'd be interested to hear what was being removed. In that meeting, we had very openly. Can you list what were the facts that you? If I may answer here, this works the same as always. So the process being that after this, a few ideological points like civilizations. The word civilization is never mentioned here, not once, and I feel like it would be nice that it would be kind of a goal.
Tässä asioita on siis tohtorikoulutus ja
when I talk about doctoral training research, it can be part of.
Mutta mun mielestä joku polku
siitä, it's not our main focus, but a kind of a path on how, when during their studies, students can participate in research work and a means to continue with like continuative and post-grad studies. I'll put these on for master level degree. I hope that AYYE would take a stance that what kind of black box it would be in Finland, how you get to the master's choices. There's very varied and very detailed and very complex. There was this general write-up that choices should be transparent, but for example, the Aalto point of view, if you have a bachelor's degree here and go to master's degree studies or something that might be a bit near, so maybe that. Then also I'll have one point maybe put the rest on this studies teaching, like classroom teaching. That would be kind of like we could maybe take this COVID like lesson from here that people shouldn't come to campus when they're sick, and maybe the enabling factors so that classroom teaching shouldn't lead to the situation where students have to study when sick. But this could actually be a different, because once again, here in the fall, we have a hell of a lot of people who are sick on campus because they have to be, and that sucks.
Kiitos. Palosua kysyit.
So thank you, Palosua. Asked on Telegram about the forms. It should have been something that was sent to you via email. If not, please inform us. We will find out what's going on.
Kiitos. Palosua seuraavaksi.
Thank you.
Yes, Palosua vihreämpi Aalto.
Thank you, Palosua greener Aalto. I will be seconding Yläpoikelluksessa point
liittyen näistä korona-ajan opeista ja haluaisin siihen vielä
about the COVID teachings, and I would like to expand that in this policy paper I couldn't find a mention of remote teaching and how it can be created.
Myös kiinnitettäisiin huomiota jatkossa, vaikka onkin
we would take a stance on this.
Mä teen tästä kyllä mielellään vähän paremman ehdotuksen sitten sinne Formsiin, kun mä sen löydän. Saanko jatkaa?
Continue.
Mulla oli myös kysymys aiemmin siellä kalvoilla.
I had a comment on removal of comments of maybe study credit unifications. I couldn't maybe get it, but I'd be interested here that what has been stricken.
No, tarkkakirjaus, mikä on poistettu, on Aalto-yliopiston kurssien
Yes, that was removed. Is that the study credit amount should be unified within the Aalto University, which promotes internal mobility, and to promote this, for example, 6 credit study modules would be good. So have the general policy about
yhteen opintopisteen vaadittavat työmäärä on yhtenäinen sekä alasta ja opettajasta.
It's unified the amount of work required for one study credit regardless of the school or the teacher. Yes, I agree with these comments, both of them. And for courses, like important, and that's why I have submitted several proposals for change via forms that we think would better promote the freedom of students. I will not read them out loud here now, because I don't want to, but just hope that these would be taken into account in the future. Thank you. Any other request for floor?
Hakkarainen, Kylterirengas, tosiaan.
Hakkarainen from Kylterirengas. Open University is mentioned here shortly. I feel that this sentence doesn't really show to make.
Ehkä se, mistä vielä toimisto toivoisi, niin kuin myös Vaivakin toivoi jonkinnäköistä niin kuin mielipidettä, niin oli nimenomaan just...
The office and the Vaiva asked for our input is about the priority between exam admissions and matriculation exam admissions. So maybe we could have a bit more detailed stance on that as well. Yes, in Vaiva exam.
Jos tästä olisi mahdollista saada nopeaa.
So maybe if we could have a bit of a show of hands for this issue. Yes, we can have a preliminary vote if you want to.
Palosua oli seuraavana vielä.
Palosua vihreämpi Aalto. Puhuttiin, että kaivattiin kommentteja siihen
You said you wanted comments on
pääsykokeen ensisijaisuuteen tai vastaavaan
admission exams and its priority I would be interested to hear if you have any research data, how this reform in admissions, where it favors the matriculation exam admission much more. Do we have any kind of a research on this reform, its effects? It would be nice if we could base our discussion on research information. Thank you. There isn't that much research information yet because it's such a new reform, but recently there was a study on it, or a report. It doesn't really affect people's backgrounds or the gender distribution for admitted students. It has made it a bit faster for young people to get sooner into university. I think the biggest difference is that young people can overall start their higher education studies earlier than before. A follow-up question. Did this look into, for example, young people's mental health implications? Have they felt unnecessary stress based on this because of the reform, which I think, based on my gut feeling, would be a threat or a risk when it comes to the reform?
Joo, siis tässä mainitussa VATin jutussa ei ollut sitä, ja käytännössä kun...
This study did not take it into account, and when this reform was done in the spring, it also ignored the stress placed on upper and secondary school students. So it's difficult to say anything about that at this stage. But one thing I wanted to comment is this open pathway. So, because the stance that the Open University has is pretty much the same as was in the old policy paper, so that we have interpreted it in the way that the Open University pathway could exist. So the maximum of 60 credits. So we are not in favor of, for example, SYL's policy, limiting it only to 10 study credits. And we also don't want the situation where a person would do their entire bachelor's degree equally to get into higher education, despite their success in the matriculation exam. So I think this kind of a proportional priority of different pathways would be a bit short-sighted, because we may receive research information more in the future. So maybe what would be important to do is just to keep these pathways open and dismantle all obstacles for higher education for all people. Thank you, Paloso, for Vihreämpi Aalto. Yes, good comment from Yle Poikalos. I agree, and I'm not entirely sure how to phrase this in the policy paper, so I won't even try. But my ideas on the subject are that this is maybe seen as a value choice. That is it more important to get young people into university as fast as possible, or is it more important to actually get them to study in a field that they're actually interested in? So that's why I think that the entrance examination is at least equivalent to the certificate-based admission, so that those in upper secondary education wouldn't have to make the choice during those studies that early on. So I think that through the entrance exam, these people would have better possibilities to also make these important decisions later in their life. What I want to comment is that you can have a few years off also if you apply through the certificate-based admission. So the exam isn't the only kind of option for this.
Paloso Vihreämpi Aalto kommentoisin.
Paloso Vihreämpi Aalto would like to reply that if in this hypothetical scenario, if a person is interested in applying for either to be a doctor or a social scientist, then the courses in the upper secondary school give different kind of points depending on the field. And this would cause the person to go and increase the grades they have received from the matriculation exam instead of studying for the entrance exam.
Lippuäänestys, jossa kolme vaihtoehtoa.
Avoid this kind of arbitrary votes. Because I agree with Palosua that if we don't want to have this kind of a preferral, a priority here, maybe we could kind of a more talk about whether we want to clarify this bullet point, sure that the entire system works. Do you want to have this vote, or shall we have that at the next meeting? Maybe at the next meeting. I don't think we need to have any kind of a vote at this point.
Firma voitti yläpoikellukselle, siis mä en ollut mitään tuolla lippuäänestyksellä mitään.
Yes, I'm not about to add any kind of entry here based on this vote. I'd just like to hear from the representative council what is their opinion on whether people prefer entrance exam or certificate-based admission, or do they feel that they should be equal? I don't think this is arbitrary, this vote, but rather the personal views of the representatives. This wouldn't cause any kind of entries or policies to be entered into the document. But at the moment, the advocacy team didn't feel that they are very much would need this kind of vote if you want to canvas. Like to highlight equality and say that we should admit people who are qualified into forums. No other request for floor for this item, so closing discussion. And use the forums, the link for which has been sent to you via the mailing list, if you have any proposal for change. So we'll make the
Let's calm down, sit down.
Yes, kiitos edustajisto. Jatkamme kokousta, epävirallista kokousta.
Thank you. We will continue the unofficial meeting.
Veisin, ole hyvä ja istu alas.
Please sit down.
Talousarvio ja toimintasuunnitelman anteeksi. Talousarvio ja toimintasuunnitelman toinen
So, second preliminary debate on the budget and the plan of action, item 10 on the docket. Thank you, Chairperson. First off, let's start so that let's check that the person next to you has not disappeared during the break. Wonderful. Now you can actually hear my voice. At least Obs is not saying you can't hear me.
Toimintasuunnitelma. Tänään tarkoituksena esityslistassa lukee toimintasuunnitelman budjetin lähetekeskustelu.
It states that the second preliminary debate on the budget, we actually, when we did the write-up, we were actually ready on what we actually want to bring. So we decided that we will bring you the projects. So housing activity projects have not been changed.
Kysyttävää tai kerrottavaa, mitä nyt
tässä vaiheessa tuoda
koko edustajistolle
käsittelyyn, vaan for the Repco, but rather something we will look at the budget next meeting. But
osalta on kokenut aika paljonkin muutoksia. Me lisättiin
lots of changes in this document, however.
Slaidi tähän alkuun, joka hieman selittää.
The action plan 2024, we added a kind of a slide here. The essential being that the mention about automatic membership. We wonder about what to do with it. We want it in the paper, but in the nature that it has a kind of a cross-cut effect on everything we do next year. So making these surveys and scenario analysis, but also we need to take into factor that the fact that when we're writing new papers, that as a theme it exists, and when it's mentioned here on the action plan, we have a good resources for it because it's part of our strategic funding system. This was asked last time, has it been ensured enough funding? So resource on what is our Sealy solutions and Aalto's and our solution, and who is paying for what and what's being done by whom. And it was quite a complex operation, but now we are well versed in what can be done. The understanding is that it's so much cheaper than just rather buying an outside party. And also facility project, it's almost done except for all the things that need doing. So a large portion of things spent this year on the fact that centralizing all the billing and administrative power, all the processes kept under me, so that housing activity won't be done, or housing activity won't do anything under single rental specs. So we have one individual who can lead this currently. So now it enables the fact that like I have been accepting invoices, like how insane cleaning costs we have. Changes will be up and coming.
Yhteistyössä yhteisön kanssa, että tehdään ne silleen järkevästi, että se tukee kaikkien toimintaa, mutta siellä on kyllä saatavissa.
Supporting that it supports everyone's activities, but we have lots of monetary savings up and coming from that direction as well.
Viime vuodelta ja on kyllä erittäin
last year and are very, very coherent and very topical questions. Then this is also the slide that was in the year 22, the policy not in the policy, but the action plan, this kind of slide, and we decided that this was actually pretty good. As far as ideas go, and we decided to increase this to this year's action plan. This one slide which had this I'll give you a moment to read on what we've actually written here.
Jos se on liian pienellä, niin tämä on...
If it's too small, this is something that can be sent to you via email. If you can see better from your own screen. Also, the English version has been sent via email.
Kolmeen. Ja ne ovat tässä tarkemmin. Yhdenvertaisuussuunnitelma, eli meillä on kaikennäköisiä linjauksia.
We have all kinds of policies about
yhtä selkeää kokonaisuutta, ja olisi hyvä, että olisi. Ja että sisältäisi sekä niin kuin toisaalta toimiston toimintaa koskevia, että myös sitten Aalto-yhteisöä ja vapaaehtoistoimintaa käsitteleviä asioita. Ja
community
jos ja kun sieltä varmasti havaitaan jotain asioita,
when and if we notice that some things should be updated or made done better, then we will do so, or at least make them into new projects at the very least. Especially taking into account the opportunity of non-Finns to participate in activities. This year we've also already discussed with our international board members opportunities to participate in activities. So a special care will be focused on that.
Turvallisemman tilan periaatteet.
Be even better.
Käydään läpi, päivitetään tarvittaessa, varmistetaan, että...
We have the safer space principles drafted up in 2021. Let's check so that it won't be just a document which has no stance, but people actually know them, that they're used, they're utilized. And of course, providing tools for associations. We, as an AYYE, have good tools, and we know that our associates have good tools. For example, I know, that the Tekniikan akateemiset and the academic engineers and architects in Finland has made a battery for event organizers that these could be thought out, that could be taken into account. So tools like this,
näistä teemoista kiinnostuneille,
organizing trainings for interested individuals and association, the central office staff resources. So nothing will be done alone.
Salkkoon kuuluu yhdenvertaisuutta ja muuta, niin totta kai he tekee sitä yhdessä ja hallitus
we have individuals doing these together with the board.
Osin, kun esimerkiksi vaikka yhteisövaliokunta, jos sellainen ensi vuodeksi perustetaan, niin
if we have a community committee next year, then there might be the ideas that would be there.
Sitten AY:n yhteistoiminnan kehittäminen.
Then AYY's development of AYY's community activities. We did some blobs that were placed under here, like the alumni activities and a few more. And then some alumni activities that AYYE was in the previous version. Clarify that whether or not AYYE has some sort of alumni activities and what it's like. And ensure that we have the framework to create the kind of alumni activity that we wish to be created. And by alumni activity, I'm of course meaning people who are retiring from AYY's activities, not just all the students. Who it concerns mainly is that needs to make a policy on when doing the policies, what will actually be what individuals.
Tutor-toiminnan kehittäminen. Tämä oli viimeksi semmoisena...
Development of tutor activities. This was kind of a smaller blurb. That has been escalating already between the meetings. That
tai niin kuin meillä ja Aallolla on käynnistynyt
Aalto have a kind of a tutor development project that has been ongoing. the train is moving, we are participating in the train or not. Of course, we want to be. We wanted to do so that we need to actually ensure the resources for these activities and the opportunities to discuss with the university. And it would be good that after this process, it would be very clear to us that the tutor activities, who's in charge of what, how does money move, who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that. Because currently there's a lot of kind of blurred lines that people who have done this know how it's done, but past that, nobody really knows anything. No written data, for example. Wide knowledge is one of the issues which has kind of moved a lot and changed a lot because we have more students. The frameworks which have been created that have been adequate for the time being are no longer adequate for the current situation. We can get more individuals to do the trainings, and when we have more trainings, AYY's resources will not be adequate to work the current model, how it has developed. There's also the writing that it's my responsibility. It's mainly there so that this is a theme where especially Roni and Tuuli have been active. The tutor task will be somebody next year. We have discussed with the rector, we have discussed with many parties, but we need one name on the paper now that it has already been developed and divided to 2 teams. The highest one from there. We can discuss with others, but I won't be doing this alone. Acknowledgements update. The acknowledgements regulation could be developed, and we are trusting that we will find a chair for next year that could actually develop this further for next year, so we can actually get it done. And if you manage to reside in this very room, please vouch yourself. Then this is a new point, but kind of an old point as well. So the evaluation of the plan for the development of community structures report, which was drafted in 2019, all kinds of proposals for change were thrown around on how our community framework should be updated. Then we had COVID, and that kind of at least slowed, mostly almost halted development of the suggestions and implementing all the suggestions. We are not supposed to invent the wheel again, but let's not forget that we had this paper, used a lot of time for it, the RepCo did a lot of work on it. Thinking of taking it kind of out of the mothballs next year, looking what is relevant, what is outdated, what do we want to update, what we want to ask a new RepCo, and what things are like, oh, this is a good idea, let's implement this.
Niin, että tässä oikeastaan vastuu jää sitten ensi vuoden toimijoille siitä, että mitkä
the responsibility will be for next year.
Käytäntöön, että kuinka suuri projekti.
Movers and shakers and how large the project will actually be. But when it's here, it will be something that will take place. We'll look at it in a critical manner. And we'll secure funding for it. And latest but not least, my Freudian slip in Finnish, sorry there. AYYE of the future. We have several familiar things and one new. We discussed the strategy earlier. Said that yes, the strategy very good, but we still decided like let's let next year's actives evaluate it so that what they want to update from it, or if they want to update it. If they see like this is very good, let's change nothing. So.
Sitten voitte Fannin suuntaan katsoa.
We look at Fanny.
että missä laajuudessa sitten strategiaa ensi vuonna käsitellään uudessa edustajistossa.
Looking at what we do
Jäsenkysely, tämä
next
on
year.
uusi ja periaatteessa taas vanha. Eli
Member survey, another old point, which is a new point. In 2018 and 2020, we've done these member surveys with the idea that it would be nice if we'd know what our members think of our activities and services. Now it would be really nice to do it again. This is quite a fresh idea in a sense that it depends on whose table it'll land on. It might require a lot of work. Maybe something that we want to do next year, and when and if it's done by somebody who is a professional, in cooperation with them, we should get good data out of it without it becoming too heavy on one individual.
Ja yritysyhteistyö, tästä oli puhetta muistaakseni jo viimeksikin.
Corporate relations, corporate cooperation, we already discussed. Current corporate cooperation is quite small and usually supporting our events. If you want it to be anything else, what it could be, and we want it to be something else, how do we actually reach the world where that's actually something else? So kind of defining the will. Are we satisfied with the current situation? Do we want it to be something else? That's kind of the first step to define it. And when we have that, and looking at what does it actually mean in terms of like resourcing, we get more volunteers, recruit more staff members, whatever we want to do. We're not kind of committing to big investments. For example, getting more staff members to develop this.
Ja kestävän kehityksen ohjeistus.
On sustainable development.
Siellä oli pienenä
sustainability guideline update. More thing when we actually let go of the small things slide that could maybe actually a big thing now. So 2019 we have done our sustainability guidelines. We have very specific things like talk about if we are going from Turku to Stockholm, what would be the best ship company? So that might not be up to the latest standards. So maybe we'll not redraft the documents, but maybe we could kind of update the really outdated stuff.
Niin pois. Ja toki sitten jalkauttaa mahdolliset uudet
of course
ohjeistukset.
Put the new
Siinä olipi
regulations out and about. That was my presentation for today. Want to actually add anything to my ramblings before I open the discussion, or ask the chairperson to open the discussion? Thank you.
Täydentää
maybe
edellistä edustajiston keskustelua, missä myöskin nostettiin tämä huomioon.
That previous discussion where we talked about acknowledgements and this as a project and what is this need of this here. I thought I'll open it up a bit. I can maybe kind of talk about Matias Saikku, who's the chair of the acknowledgements committee. That was should have been presenting here, but in essence, we have two larger development targets, first of which being that currently our acknowledgement process is based very much on the fact that you are an AYYE active who have been very social, who has lots of friends who remember to put in a suggestion. So we want to develop this.
Vaan pystyttäisiin jollain tavalla laajemmin keräämään myöskin.
But it would be a broader. We could maybe get acknowledgements data from people who deserve them.
Kehityskohtana on
another point would be the fact that
meillä on aika rajatut nämä kategoriat.
Currently we have quite narrow categories, out of which you'll actually get to go.
Avataan aiheesta keskustelua.
So opening discussions with Fielman requesting the floor.
Puheenjohtaja Fimma Votti.
Thank you.
Näyttää ihan hyvältä. Täällä on nyt
Looks very good. This is clearly something of meat on the bones, as it were.
eri projekteihin. Yksi asia, mikä mun mielestä tässä pitäisi olla silti vielä mukana, ja mikä
One thing I feel that should be included
olisi IT-asiat ja digitaalisuus. Ja mieluusti
would be the IT issues and digitalization. I would like to see this as one of the topics of the action plan. AYYE has or should develop its IT and digitalization when looking at project. Looking at this as I mentioned apart, but I would like to look at the thing outside of the housing committee at AYYE. So if possible, I would wish this kind of project be included. Thank you.
Vastaan vaan.
Joo, ehkä kommenttina tuossa ekalla slidissa.
Yes, as a comment on the first slide, it said that it doesn't contain all of our activities, and maybe for the ICT issues, we are now reviewing our website and the SharePoint world, and there are quite large projects. So after we've completed them, a big part of next year has already elapsed, most likely. So I don't think we will have resources anymore after these projects. Halusua? Yes, I have a few points. I mentioned one of them now.
Erittäin hyvä tarkennus Iidalta tähän.
I think Ida made a very good specification addition to these acknowledgements. And what came to my mind is that it would be fun to try and focus on associations within AYYE that may be so new or young that they don't have their own rewards or acknowledgements in place. So if you think about, for example, for large associations such as KIS guilds, they already have their own acknowledgement system. And I don't think there's a need to add to those. I think what would be the most valuable is to focus these acknowledgements to activities that are not acknowledged. Yes, I have a similar comment. In the Teekkari meetings of this autumn, we have talked about the Teekkari insignia and establish a working group. Was decided to establish a working group on this issue, and people had hopes that it could be done in cooperation with the AYYE office, because AYYE is culturally the kind of highest decision-making body when it comes to Teekkari culture.
Tehdään toimiston kanssa yhteistyötä.
So that's why the working group thinks it would be good if this would be done in cooperation with the people at the office. So maybe it would be good if this could be...
Vaikka ne on vain tietyn osa AY-jäsenistöstä, niin silti ne on sinänsä
And yes, and even though this is just for part of AYYE's members...
Eli ei kenenkään tunnuksia, mutta mun mielestä olisi niin kuin hyvä toimisto.
Or actually they are insignia for TKY, so actually no one's insignia, but it would be good if this could be added.
Aalto, sitten
Halusua, vihreämpi Aalto.
Halusin nostaa oli, että siellä puhuttiin yhdessä kohtaa...
Other comments talked about this facility development project, talked about, for example, cleaning costs. And we'll talk about the development of tutor activities and working together there with Aalto. They relate to both of these. My point is, I don't know if you have already thought about this, but I think it would be good. Yes, most definitely associations and other interest groups are usually experts in these issues. I'd also like to mention when Antti talked about this tutor project, that it hasn't really gone that well.
Sektorin kautta juurikin näitä niin kuin
So throughout sector there have been
tutor-vastaavaa ja myöskin Artsin puolet tutor-vastaavia mukana ja näin varmasti on tavoitteena.
People responsible of tutor activities in the associations have been involved in this work. Yes, exactly so. And I believe this is one of the reasons why this facility project, kind of a forever project, their facilities, it really requires involve individual members who use the facilities. They're not always just associations. Yläpoikelus. Thank you. Yläpoikelus from Kylterenrengas.
Strategian liittämistä ja isoja teemoja.
I'm very much in favor of incorporating the strategy here.
Ja sitä toivoisin näkevän myös edustajiston työskentelyssä tulevalla kaudella, että muistutetaan, että
and hope to see also the representative council's work, that people would remember that what we are actually doing, what is the goal of these projects. Because often people go too much into these bureaucratic details, but always remember to look at the big picture and the actual end goal of these entries. I'm especially happy to see this association, community or association structure project being brought back here. Me and Representative Grekov talked about quite a long time ago when this project was finished. And back then when it was finished, there were a lot of seniors at the office working on it. So very important to update it. A lot has happened since 2018. A whole batch of students have graduated after that. We have also seen in recent years how we tried to have this kind of a more, kind of almost too much common Aalto spirit associations, but now we have gone more to kind of these exclusive associations for different fields. So maybe it's good now to have this ideological discussion on what direction we should take now, since now things are a bit more stable. What direction the community wants to take? Palosan Määttä. We will talk to you about that, maybe not this representative council, but the next one. So it's not a statement of any kind, that it's not development plan and also this carbon neutrality plan, which I believe the representative council has discussed and wanted to add it as an action plan project previously. So it's the reason why it's not here anymore. Especially if it has been an action plan project before, but it has not been completed. Because it also stated in a strategy that we want to be carbon neutral by 2030. So, but do you feel there's still enough time until 2030? That's why it's not here, or what's the reasoning behind this?
Lisää Ida sieltä osin tai hallitus muutenkin, jos
A board, feel free to add if I say something wrong, something that's not true. But yes, I don't think it's that conscious a choice of removing it from this document. We just think that the first item would be updating this, and we didn't want to add this here as a project that we will do if we have the time. We haven't forgotten about it, but we just didn't feel that it's that critical that we would have added it here to the list. I think Ida wants to comment on this as well. Yes.
Puhun hallituksen puolesta, mutta uskoisin, että...
I'm speaking on behalf of the board, but I believe that we at the office recognize that 2030 is not that far away. But one big reason here is that it sounds like a nice little easy report to make, but it's actually quite extensive, close discussion. Thank you for the good discussion. And the motion is the representative council decided to record the preliminary debates on the budget and the plan of action. It has been decided. Closing item 10, moving to item 11. Any other business? Opening discussion. Executive Director on Palosuo. Thank you. I don't think it's reasonable to complain to people who have not attended, but I hope that you would tell your groups that it's critically important that the last meeting would have a quorum, because otherwise you will leave the action plan and budget for the next representative council. So that would be a nice prank, but maybe it would be even nicer to have a quorum in the next meeting. So maybe if you start canvassing your representatives that they would actually attend next time. Palosua from Vihreämpi Aalto, what a coincidence. Executive Director, I just wanted to talk about this same topic myself, because this is already the second time in a very short time period where we haven't had quorum. Unfortunately, I was at fault the last time too, so I am also partially to blame, but I'm here at least today. So if I remember correctly, at the end of last year, I tried to stir a discussion about the activity of the Representative Council and the room for development in that. And it now becomes culminated at the end of this 2-year term, where I had the second meeting this autumn where we do not have quorum. I don't think this is just an individual case, because when I went through these old minutes, there was a clear trend to be seen that always at the end of the second year of the term, the number of representatives decreases, often below 30. I think this is a big problem, especially since now we have these meetings with very big issues and we don't have enough representatives to decide on them.
Viime vuoden lopulla muistaakseni ehdotin, että tässä pitäisi pystyä esimerkiksi kokeilemaan.
And last year I think I proposed that maybe we could try out 1-year terms for the RepCo, but then not very many people were in favor of that, so of course we didn't make this change. But the way I see it, we should do something, because the situation has not gotten any better. Usually this quote that is often misattributed to Einstein is that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect something to change. I think we should now really try to do something new to remedy the situation. And I also like to note that when I tried to gather this data from the old minutes, I also noticed that not even all the minutes for last year were there. So I would hope that, as today when I tried to prepare for the meeting, I could not find the minutes for the previous meeting, which made my preparing for this meeting more difficult. But yes, the most important thing here is, even though I'm not here next year, that hopefully someone else, the famous someone else, could come up with ideas how to better activate the Representative Council. Thank you. And Filman. Thank you. I think a positive comment to end the meeting on is, I think this meeting has been very nice. There have been a lot of opinions brought forth, a lot of active discussion. So thank you for all representatives here today for that. Thank you.